This documentary is about the Dutch migration to America. It was created to show that there was more than one perspective on the colonization of America. Primary sources were used to show the perspective. It starts out with the journey of Henry Hudson to New York, explains the patroonship plan, and goes all the way to the Second Anglo-Dutch War.
Piece of the puzzle onto the double.
The Dutch, great sailors and traders, dominated trade and colonization in the New York area until the 1600s. But how did they get here? Why did they come here? How did such a small country develop such a prosperous colony? These are the questions we asked, and what you're about to see is the answers.
The Age of Discovery began in the early 15th century and lasted until the 17th century. During this time, Europeans began exploring the world by sea searching for new trading partners, different goods, and competed to find the Northwest Passage. The current eastern route involved a long journey around the tip of Africa, so they desperately needed a shorter way to go. All the countries knew that the first one to find the passage would become extremely rich because everyone would want to use it, so the race was on. One of the countries that was very much involved in this competition was the Netherlands. The people that lived there, the Dutch, were very good sea merchants and sailors, and in one of their efforts to find the Northwest Passage, they ended up discovering one of the most prosperous trading posts in the New World, New Netherlands.
Piece of the puzzle onto the double.
What famous DJ is Dutch?
He's been knighted by the Queen of Holland.
One of the great Dutch explorers was Henry Hudson. Henry Hudson was born in England in about 1565. He learned about sailing from fishermen and merchants and proved to be a natural-born sailor. He made several attempts to find a Northwest Passage to Asia, sponsored by different companies, and became very well known for these attempts. Hudson was hired by the United East India Company because he had a lot of experience.
The Dutch United Company signed a contract for me to search for the Northwest Passage. They promised me 800 guilders for leading their expedition. They also said they'd pay me expenses while I'm gone. What a wonderful deal.
They wanted to embark on yet another mission to try and find the elusive Northwest Passage. He set sail on the Half Moon with a crew of about 20 men in 1609.
April 6th to April 8th, 1609, I set sail with my men on a new ship called the Half Moon, on a beautiful and speedy vessel. A second vessel set sail right after me. We have finally left all Dutch land and now we are sailing on open waters.
Like the famous Christopher Columbus, Hudson never made it to Asia, but he did discover what is now known as New York. He went up today's Hudson River, claiming all the land along the way for his employers, and that area later became known as New Netherland. A 3-year monopoly of the land was granted to the New Netherlands Company in 1614. The company built Fort Orange on Castle Island near Albany and began trading with natives for furs. New Netherland became one of the biggest trading areas in the New World, but the area was never colonized until 1618 when the monopoly ended and was not renewed. The area was in need of a permanent political presence in case of a possibility of an English, French, or Spanish attack, so the Netherlands granted a 24-year monopoly to a company that would colonize the land, the Dutch West India Company.
Piece of the puzzle onto the double.
He has his own Reebok sneaker.
The company wanted the area to become a province, and their wish came true in 1623 when New Netherlands was granted provincial status. The first settlers were immediately brought in, but surprisingly, they weren't Dutch. They were French-speaking Walloon families. French-speaking Walloons were people of Celtic stock in northeastern France, present-day Belgium, who became Protestant during the Reformation. Because of this, many of the people were exiled to Holland, England, and Germany, and emigrated to the New World in 1624. Settlers continued arriving until 1625, along with livestock and supplies.
Puzzle onto the double.
He is the first DJ in history to play for an Olympic event. The Mohawks and the Mannequins were two native tribes that lived near Fort Orange, now Fort Nassau. The fort was surrounded by a lot of Mannequin settlements with whom the Dutch had a trading agreement with. The Mohawk tribe got jealous of the Mannequin trading success and attacked them in 1626, causing a war to break out. The Dutch sent help to the Mannequin tribe because they wanted to maintain their trade agreements with them, but the tribe was still defeated 2 years later. Because of the war, the women and children that lived in Fort Nassau were forced to move to safety. The Director General of the company, Peter Minuit, purchased the island of Manhattan and built Fort Amsterdam to provide a safe place for the refugees of Fort Nassau to live. It was purchased for 60 guilders, which today is $951.08.
November 7, 1626. High and mighty lords, yesterday the ship, the Arms of Amsterdam, arrived here. It set sail from New Netherland out of River Mauritius on the 23rd of September. They have purchased the island Manhattan from the Indians for the value of 60 guilders. It is 11,000 morgens in size. In Amsterdam, the 5th of November, 1626. Your high and mightinesses, obedient shade.
The puzzle onto the double.
He is known for popularizing mixed compilations.
Like in any city or state today, things had to be paid for to maintain the colony. The West India Company had to pay for doctors, military protection, and your usual bills and fines. The money that was left over from paying these was the company's profit, which soon proved not to be enough. The company came up with the idea of a patroonship plan to help with the company's profits. A patroonship is basically like a partnership where a patroon, or a person who held an estate with certain privileges, was given land, and in return, they would bring settlers at their expense. The patroonship plan was created and proposed in 1628. It was designed as a way to lure more settlers and wasn't very popular at first, so revisions were made. Patroons could trade with the New England colonies and Virginia and could partake in fur and fish trade. The revised plan was accepted in 1629, and Kilian von Rensselaer became the patroon to the largest fur trading area in the region, Rensselaerswyck. The answer is Tiesto! There weren't enough people settling the area, and the government warned the company, saying that if they didn't increase the population, they would take over and do it themselves. The company responded by passing the Freedoms and Exemptions and Articles and Conditions. The Freedoms and Exemptions were written in 1629 by the Dutch West India Company for all patroons, masters, or private persons who would plant colonies in New Netherland. It was written in an effort to help settle New Netherland. It was made up of 171 articles that established the ground rules and expectations for the patroons and new settlers of the colony.
To the puzzle onto the double.
What famous DJ is known as the 17-year-old Dutch prodigy?
One of his most famous songs plays on the commercial for Madden 25.
The articles basically said that any member of the company that could bring in more than 50 settlers over the age of 15 would be granted land to hold as a patroon. The tenants would not be taxed for 10 years, but during this time they would not be allowed to move from the land they were on and had to be settled within 1 year of the land grant. The patroons would have full freedom to purchase any goods in New Netherland, New England, and New France, except for furs, but would have to pay a 5% export tax. The patroon would have to pay for anything that had to do with the building projects, including the tools. No farmer could sell any land without offering it to a patroon first. The patroon had to hire ministers and schoolmasters and was expected to share net profits with the tenants. The article also respected the Native Americans. For example, one of the articles said to the patroon must satisfy the Indians of that place for the land, which meant that the land had to be bought from the Indians and could not be taken. The articles were ratified in 1629.
To the puzzle, onto the double.
He was in Miami in March for his 2014 Ultra Music Festival debut.
In 1638, Johann de Laet, one of the directors of the company, drew up certain articles and conditions for the better colonization of New Netherland and submitted them on August 30th on behalf of the company to the government of New Netherlands for their approbation. Number 8 in these articles and conditions was known as the first record of a public tax for school purposes and reads, "Each householder and inhabitant shall bear such tax and public charge as shall hereafter be considered proper for maintenance of clergymen, comforters of the sick, schoolmasters, and such like necessary officers." The articles and conditions were rejected by the government. The committee they were given to reported that, which being taken into deliberation, the High Mightiness have resolved and concluded to hereby declare that the aforesaid articles drawn up by the Amsterdam Chamber are, in their present form, not adapted to the service and promotion of the colonies of New Netherland. They were later revised, though, and passed in 1639. The two plans brought in so many more colonists that New Netherlands had to expand along the Hudson River from New Amsterdam and northwest to Fort Nassau.
To the puzzle, onto the double.
His first big hit was first released as a white label.
In 1650, the Dutch Director General Petrus Stuyvesant, the governor of the English Connecticut colony, Edward Hopkins, met in Hartford to try and settle their boundary disputes. The Dutch trading post called the House of Hope was established in 1633 on the Connecticut River. The English arrived 3 years later and established Hartford just upstream of the Dutch settlement. The English settlers kept coming in and settling along the river until the 1640s, and the Dutch were feeling pressure from the rising English numbers. The Hartford Treaty was signed, and the Dutch agreed to give up their claims on the Connecticut River Valley to the English as long as they had clear boundaries on Long Island. The boundary line was drawn south from the westernmost point of Oyster Bay through modern Nassau County. Conflicts between the two continued for 20 years until 1674, when the Dutch had to sign over New Netherlands to the English. Back in Europe, the Dutch West India Company accepted the treaty, but the English government, which claimed all Dutch claims in North America to be illegitimate, did not. But the agreement was held in America until the English conquest of New Netherland in 1664.
To the puzzle, onto the double.
He was inspired to become a DJ when he saw Tiesto performing at the Olympics in 2004. In 1651, the Navigation Acts were passed by the Commonwealth government and were aimed at the Dutch. All trade in the colonies had to be carried in English or colonial vessels. It is said that this resulted in the First Anglo-Dutch War. This was a war between the Dutch and the English over who was the bigger, badder country and lasted from 1652 to 1674. The English had a huge obsession to become the biggest trading nation all around. The English were always ready to attack the Dutch because of their obsession, which worried many Dutch citizens. Because of this fear, in the year 1662, an alliance was made against the English between the United Netherlands and the French. This made the English angry, so they made a hasty decision to make New Netherlands a British province and gave the land to his brother James, Duke of York, and Albany as Lord Propriator. Duke sent his navy to overrun the colony. The colony of New Amsterdam was renamed New York, Fort Amsterdam was renamed Fort James, and Fort Orange became Fort Albany.
The answer is Martin Garrix.
The Dutch were a group of hard-working people. Through their trade, partnership, and war strategies, they were able to maintain many rights such as religious and civil freedoms. Even though they surrendered peacefully to the British, they prospered in the New World. They continued to be great merchants and began to gain high positions in New York. Some even became large landowners. They had no problems being under British rule, but were still able to later obtain control of Manhattan and grow their achievements in the New World.
I am a pretty little Dutch girl, as pretty as I can be, and all the boys in the neighborhood are crazy over me. My boyfriend's name is Mello, he comes from the land of